Hi, I'm Sally Russell and thank you for tuning into this episode of HIC Talks, Welcome to Helsingborg. This is a podcast series in English designed to demystify the city of Helsingborg for its international residents. In this episode, we talk to Anna Raselius, a career and guidance counsellor in adult education at Helsingborg Municipality. She explains to us the options for learning Swedish at SFE and why it's so important for newcomers to get to grips with the Swedish language. Hi Anna, thank you very much for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm very happy to interview you for our podcast because I know that you actively work with a lot of the questions that the HIC community has, and I think you'll be able to give us a lot of useful insights. Today we're going to be focusing on learning Swedish at SFE and how the team that you belong to can support and guide international job seekers. Does that sound okay?
That sounds fine, and that sounds right up my alley, and I'll be happy to help.
Perfect, thank you. Okay, so first of all, could you perhaps tell us a little bit about yourself? I understand that you've had a lot of experience living abroad.
Sure. My name is Anna, and I work as a career and guidance counselor at the adult education in Helsingborg Municipality, or Helsingborgs kommun. I've worked there for quite some time, about 15 years, but about 10 years with career guidance counseling. I also have quite a bit of experience living in different countries, so I know what it's like to come to a new country and maybe have to learn a new language and understand the job market. I have lived in the States, in England, in South Africa.
Okay, oh, thank you. So you've really had a good experience of living in lots of countries then?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, fabulous. Thank you. So I guess you really know what it's like to be a new person in a foreign country and to navigate the system and to work out what it's all about. Okay, so I think the first question I'm going to ask you actually is why learn Swedish at all? Because especially for English speakers, it's very easy to get around in Sweden without Swedish. We know that everyone in Scandinavia speaks incredible English. So what are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, it's very true. And that can also be a bit deceiving, I think, because it is very easy to get around in Sweden and in the Scandinavian countries just using English. You can go to the shop, to the doctor, anything you need to do with your children's school, you can manage in English, which is a blessing if you speak English, because it will be so easy for you to get around. But as I used to tell my students, it is a blessing, but it is also a bit of a curse because you are not forced to use the language, even if you start learning it. And it can also be a bit deceiving because even though Swedes in general are quite used to speaking English, it is not always easy to get a job using English. And many people speak English in the work market as well, but the jobs where you can only use English are not as many, and the competition to get those jobs are quite hard, which means that if you're looking to stay here for a longer period of time, it is very advisable to learn Swedish. Also, if you have a family, it is also advisable to learn Swedish because it will be difficult with time to get into the society if you just use English.
Yeah, I think that's all very true. Thank you very much. Yeah. Okay, so if someone's just moved to Sweden and they want to register for SFE, what should they do? Can they register without a personnummer, or do they need to wait until that's come through?
First, SFE is an abbreviation, which means Swedish for immigrants, and it's open for anybody who does not know basic Swedish. If you, however, know Danish or Norwegian, it might be different. It is open for registration if you have a personal number or if you have a samordningsnumber. So you need to have one or the other of those to be able to register. If you have those numbers, it also means you're registered in an address in the municipality, which is another thing we look at. in order for you to get entrance to the SFE. So that is something you have to do before registering. But once you have that, you can register online, and the process is smooth, but you do have to have those numbers to get access to SFE first.
Okay, thank you. And you just touched on something there that I had a question about recently. And is it correct that you've got to be registered within that municipality in order to go to a school in that municipality?
Yes and no.
Okay.
Because this is generally the case. If you have a person number, you're generally registered in Helsingborg city or Helsingborg municipality because this is where you live. It is sometimes different if you have a samordnings number and you work in another municipality. Your address can be different and can be outside of the municipality. You can still apply for SFE, but then the process will be different because if you're registered in another municipality, that municipality has to pay for you to go to school in this municipality.
Okay, yeah.
Or you have to change your address, either one of those.
Okay. All right, thank you. Okay, good. Okay, another question then. I know that the system for SFE changed in Helsingborg this year. So could you tell us about the options now when people register and what they need to be looking at?
Yeah, sure. We've changed the SFE, Swedish for Immigrants system in Helsingborg recently because we see that a lot of students need more professional guidance and professional work language to be able to quickly go into the work market or quickly go on to a higher education in the area that they want to work with. So we've changed the SFE system a bit, and it's now more geared towards different professional areas that you would like to work in the future. Many students have a sort of profession with them from their country, or they have an idea of what they would like to work with or in when they start in Sweden. So this is a way of sort of speeding up the process and getting students more interested in learning Swedish within the work market language also, not just sort of general SFE, because you need both to enter the work market.
True. Yeah, thank you. And what sort of options are there then? In what kind of sectors are we looking at?
We have options in 5 professional areas, and I will try and sort of translate them in a good way. One of the areas is service, so anything service related, which is quite sort of broad. So if you're interested in that sector, that's the service sector. We have another sector, which is the nursing sector, which can be anything from assistant nurse to X-ray nurse going to the university. So it's quite a broad range there as well. Or even if you want like to have a supporting role within the nursing system, that's also the area you should choose there. We have a third area, which is preschool and school. If you want to work with preschool or school as a teacher, as an assistant, anything connected to school, then you choose that area. And then the fourth area we have is if you'd like to work in warehouse, logistics, or transport, and that's a whole area of itself. And the last area we have is construction work. So anything connected to construction work, then you choose that area. We have 9 different schools, but all schools do not have all professional areas to choose from. So the idea with the new system is that the school itself is not that important. The important thing for you is to pick a professional area that you would like to work in. And then you check what schools have that professional area. And maybe it's 3 schools, or maybe it's 5, or maybe it's just 1. And then you pick from what you can find in the area that you would like to develop your Swedish in.
Okay, all right, thank you. So one question for you there is that I know that some people are here just for perhaps 2 or 3 years, and maybe they have a spouse who's working and they may have a family they're looking after. So they want to learn Swedish, but they don't realistically expect to be entering the job market because of all their other commitments. So what would you say to those people? Because I have had a few questions from people asking whether they can still study what you might think of as general Swedish.
Yes. Well, I didn't mention before that we sort of have a three-way system within the different professional areas that you can choose from. And that would be important for these people in these situations to know about, because we have a 30-hour program, 30 hours per week. And that is, of course, for those students who would like to go fast, who'd like to learn as much as possible, and who maybe are required to go for 30 hours per week. Now, if you support yourself financially and you want to do a bit of studying, but 30 hours per week sounds a lot, well, then we have the option of 15 hours per week, which might be a bit more manageable. If you pick the 15 hours a week, you still have a section in those 15 hours that's connected to a professional area that you would like to work in. But then you can just pick what you've worked with before or what interests you. Are you a people person? Well, then maybe you should pick a service sector. Are you more technical? Then you should pick another sector just to make it more fun. Those 15 hours are during the daytime. We do have a third option, which is a flex program, which is connected to you not being online or in class very much. Sometimes a few hours per week, sometimes in the evening, but it is a flexible program. And that is also an option for some students that work a lot or have other things during the day. It can be connected to flex during the day or during the evening. So that would be an option if you just have a few hours per week that you would still like to learn a bit of Swedish.
Perfect. Okay, thank you. No, I think it's really helpful to get across to people that there are these different options, and it is actually a lot more flexible perhaps than some people realise. There's obviously a clear benefit for some people who really need to get on quickly and learn as fast as they can so they can get into the job market, and others who perhaps need a more kind of middle route. So another question at the moment, obviously we've had the pandemic now for many months. What's the system? Are people learning online or do they go into class?
Okay, at the moment, it's both. It depends a little bit on where you are at in terms of level in studying. We do have a lot of things online at the moment, Zoom classes. We do also bring students into classes in smaller groups and where it's necessary. In general, I would say the more Swedish you know and the more academic you are, the less lessons you will have on site at this moment because of COVID. But on the other hand, if you do not have a lot of education from your country, you know very little Swedish and you're not very technical, those are the students we bring into the class a lot more because they learn well from home. So there's a bit of a range of who gets to come into class more or who gets to come into class less. But anybody can come and meet their teacher if it's necessary. And people do all the time, but it's a little different depending on how many hours you do, what level you're at, things like that.
Good. So again, it sounds like there's a lot of flexibility. And do people get a lot of sort of guidance when they first sign up? When they sign up, are they allocated a mentor or a counsellor like you who can talk them through the different options?
When you sign up at the web application at this moment, you will get a message that will contact you from the adult education, and we will set up a time for you with a career guidance counsellor for a first meeting. And then we'll talk about your background, we'll talk about what you would like. We check, do you already know some Swedish or is it completely blank? We do work with translators if we need to. We use other languages if possible. And then after that meeting, it depends a little bit on what happens in that meeting, what the situation will be after that meeting. So it depends on, all of the things that come out in that meeting and the decisions that the student would like to do and the guidance counselor thinks that needs to be done before going on to school and placing.
Sure, that's great. Thank you. Okay, I've got another question for you, which I also get from time to time from people within the HIT community, and that's asking whether it's possible to study a more sort of professional Swedish course here. Is that an option at the moment?
It depends a little bit what those students mean by professional Swedish, because we do have 5 professional areas since January of this year that you could pick depending on what your area is. So those are options for some students. There are no academic SFE, which is for, if you have a PhD or a master's or something like that at the moment in Helsingborg. We do have them in Lund, but then you have to travel and it's not always a good option. But if you have those thoughts and ideas, you can talk to the career guidance counselor when you have your meeting to see what is a good fit for you. In general, I would say professional Swedish is great, but you also need a bit of general Swedish. But there are some options, but not great options at the moment that may change in the future.
Okay, yeah. And would you say that with SFE, it's very much about working at your own pace, or are you following a sort of strict curriculum with the teacher? How does that work?
There is a set curriculum, which is the same for each course in SFE, but the pace is different for different students. Obviously, if you have 7 years of education from your country, or if you have 17 years of education from your country, the pace will be different. And your pace will also be expected to be quite different if you have a lot of education than if you have little education. We have no interest in stopping somebody from going fast forward if that's what they want. Sometimes, however, if you're an academic, you tend to get really strong in some sections of the language and quite weak in other parts of the language. So one part that many academics struggle with quite a bit is the speaking part. Because writing and reading, they're very used to. They can go through a lot of materials on their own, but it is actually, required to be able to understand and speak also. And this is an area which is also difficult during COVID, because it's difficult for the students to get as much practice as they used to. So that is something to be mindful of if you're an academic, because if you go to a job interview or if you start a job and they expect you to use Swedish and it's really hard for you with the speaking and the understanding, that will hinder you to get that job or to get ahead in the company. So that is something you have to think about as an academic if you find that is difficult for you.
Yeah, thank you, that's true. Thank you, Anna. Is there anything else that we haven't covered yet?
I'm sure there are many things, but I think we've covered most of them. I would maybe add to this information that we've gone through that it is important for every student to know that you will have a teacher, but there's also a lot of supporting roles in the schools. That is not the same as in other countries. For example, a career guidance counselor is not available in a lot of countries, and many students do not know how we can help and what we do. So be mindful of listening to all the information that teachers and other staff tell you in school, so you can take advantage of the opportunities, because it's very easy to have an idea of what you would like to do in Sweden, but it's sometimes difficult to act on that idea. And it's also difficult to know all the rules and regulations that might stop you from getting to where you want to go if you just check on things by yourselves. So I would encourage you to use the career guidance counselors and also other staff that can help you out.
Good. Thank you. And of course, one thing we haven't even mentioned just now is that, of course, all this is for free, which again is very rare to find. I think if you move to another country as an immigrant and have this facility to just be able to learn Swedish for free, I mean, that is fabulous, really, isn't it? It's a great opportunity.
Yeah,
lovely.
That's very true. It is for free.
Yeah. Thank you. Lovely. And Anna, what are your top tips for learning Swedish? Is there anything that you would like to suggest to people now that they could do outside of learning at the course?
I think it depends a little bit on the COVID situation because we don't know quite how it will develop. There's a lot of things online that you can work with and that you can also meet people to speak more Swedish. Once you start SFE, pick your teacher's brain because they have a lot of good options and good opportunities that they can give you tips on how to go on, both with more academic programs and speaking and listening and understanding. There's a lot of stuff that you can get from your teachers. So they would be your number one information on that. It's sometimes easy to think that maybe Swedish language won't be that important, but it is advisable to put some effort into it because it will be easier to live in Sweden also if you know a bit more Swedish than just very, very basic. It will be more fun.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. All right, Anna, well, thank you so much. It's been really interesting to talk to you, and I really think that our listeners would have learned a lot today. So I'm very grateful and very happy you could join us.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, lovely to see you again.
Yeah, lovely to see you too.
Okay, thanks so much, and have a good day.
Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Please join us next time when we'll be finding out about international schools in Helsingborg. And thank you for listening. If you've got any thoughts or questions from this episode, you can find us at www.hiconnections.eu. On social media, we're on Instagram at HIConnections, and on Facebook and LinkedIn, we're at Helsingborg International Connections. We'd love to hear what you think, so please get in touch. Thank you as always to the Vision Fund for their support in making this series possible.